Hey, what's up, Spencer? My name is Everybody, and I like to read bad books. And today's bad book that I'm going to be talking about is called The Haunted Vagina by Carlton Mellick III. Now, before we jump into this, I do want to make it clear that we're not calling this a bad book in order to be haters or to throw any shade at the author. Writing a bad book is a skill, and I personally believe that it is very important for there to be just as many bad books out there as there are good ones. All books can be great and fun as long as we decide to open our minds and decide that we just want to have a good time with it. So that's what we're doing here. We are going to have a great time going through The Haunted Vagina. Now, I do want to give a couple warnings before we do officially dive into this. This book is technically an erotica, so I understand why some people might not really be into this video and might want to skip on over to the next one, but I do want to say that for this being an erotica, there is very little actual intimacy going on, so I would say that I think you should give this one a chance. Saying that, I am going to give a warning for gore and body horror. There was a lot more of that in this book than I was expecting going into it, but I do also think it's worth it. So with that, let's jump right in. This book starts off by introducing us to our main character, Steve. Steve loves his girlfriend, Stacy, very much, but has also recently discovered that her vagina is haunted. Ooh. In fact, her vagina is so haunted that he can hear ghostly voices echoing from her hoo-ha anytime she sleeps. And yes, this will be a video where I am using every single slang for vagina that I know, so you better strap yourself in for that one. Listen, she said, pulling my head into her lap and pressing my ear against her vagina. It was like listening to the ocean in a hairy flesh seashell. You're playing, I said. She giggled. It was all a joke. But then, I heard it. A voice inside of her. I couldn't understand the words. A woman crying, babbling in a deranged language. Then she screamed in my ear, and I jumped out from between Stacy's legs. So according to Stacy, her vagina's been haunted for, like, ever? So much so that when she was little, a ghost girl used to crawl out of it and play with her. No, I am not making this up. But as Stacy got older, Stacy told the ghost girl from her vajayjay that she wasn't real, so the ghost girl went away, and then when Stacy got old enough to go to college, she would start charging people money at parties to listen to her haunted hoo-ha. But that only went on for so long until people started accusing her of shoving a speaker in her panties and just faking the whole thing. I hate how many times I read books and I realize that I would have been the hater slash bully in this person's story. I'm sorry, but you're just not going to convince me that you have a haunted meat clam. In fact, knowing me, I would be the person to first accuse Stacy of faking the whole entire thing and getting everybody at the party to turn against her. Because in this day and age of AI and scammers, I know that you can't trust anybody. Not even this! What secrets are you keeping from me? Lila, your vagina isn't haunted, is it? I hope not. The stupid, impulsive part of my brain is telling me that I should do a joke where I listen to my dog's vagina. But the louder, smarter part of my brain is saying, no, we don't need that. I woke her up from a nap just to do this. I feel so bad. So Steve is rightfully very weirded out to learn that Stacy has a haunted vagina, but he never considers leaving her because he loves Stacy very, very, very much. In fact, a lot of the reasons why he does, frankly, kind of really stupid stuff in this book is always written off as Steve just saying, well, damn, I just love Stacy so much that I just couldn't not. And, like, honestly, based. Ladies, you better get you a man who will ride and die no matter how many times your cervix plays Spooky Halloween Remix Volume 4. Wait, now I'm considering how Stacy's pap smears must have gone. Alright, Stacy, time for your yearly exam, so why don't we pop those legs open and check to see what's going on under the hood? Okay, but just to let you know, Doctor, my vagina's a little bit different than everybody else's. Oh, you ladies are always saying things like that, but don't worry. I, a man, definitely know way more about vaginas than you ever will, so let's just break those chopsticks and see what's going on down there. Okay. Because it's Thriller night. Thriller night. Have you tried getting pregnant? I bet getting pregnant would fix that. Anyway, Steve and Stacy start getting it on for the first time in a month, and it's going pretty good until Stacy starts literally giving birth to a giant fucking skeleton. She stands and examines her belly as it shuffles. It moves about as if it's filled with 1,000,000 cockroaches. And in between her legs, a skeletal hand is reaching out of her. Stacy watches her body in amazement as the hand clutches onto her leg and pulls. Another hand emerges and grabs her other thigh, trying to pull itself out of there. I leap to my feet and grab the skeletal hands away from her thighs. I have no idea what I think I'm doing. I pull on the skeletal arms and a skull pops out at me, animated, chattering its teeth. Stacy grabs onto the bed frame and I pull as hard as I can, ripping the skeleton halfway out. So Steve proceeds to murder the absolute shit out of this skeleton while it's still inside of Stacy by crushing its skull, and then pulls the skeleton the rest of the way out of her and just throws it on the floor. And the weird thing is, like this wasn't weird enough already, somehow the skeleton was like growing skin and hair and stuff as it was coming out of Stacy, and now that it's dead and on the floor, it's kind of just like melting into a goo that for some reason they just never bother to clean up. Stacy claims that this has never happened before. They never explain why it's happening now, but because this was such a traumatizing experience for both of them, Steve and Stacy decide to go out and get fucking wasted. Honestly, I don't know what else somebody is supposed to do after an experience like that, so like, yeah. And once Stacy is sufficiently hammered, her attitude about this whole entire situation completely turns around. She has gone from being horrified at giving birth to Skeletor to now being insanely curious about where this skeleton has come from, and now moves on to insisting that this means that Steve has to find out the origins. So, she makes Steve strip down completely, shave himself fully bald in order to decrease resistance, lube himself up with some lotion that he just found in Stacy's purse, and then go inside of her. And when I say go inside of her, I mean like fully. Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Knees and toes, knees and toes. So Steve crawls his way through Stacy's, tunnel of love, and after a little while, he comes out on the other side and finds himself in a completely different world. The face of the cliff is covered in dozens of claw marks. Must have been from that skeleton creature. I examine the forest. There could be more of them around here. There is an old fence buried in mud and rot, indicating some kind of civilization is nearby, or had been nearby at one time. Steve continues to explore around the area, coming across what seems to be an old farm, as well as a whole bunch of farm equipment and other, like, what seems to be regular people stuff. And he does also see another person, but it doesn't really seem to be human. He initially describes it as being a creature with red and white skin and what seems to be rabbit ears. And seeing as Steve isn't really sure whether the creatures inside of Stacy's vagina are safe or not, he rightfully hides from this creature until it has gone away, and then escapes back through the hole of whence he came. When Steve finally makes it back to the regular world, Stacy concludes that her vagina is not like a portal to another reality, but instead she has a very tiny world living inside of her, and she says that she knows that because she could feel Steve growing and shrinking as he crawled in and out of her. And Stacy is so enthralled by this idea of this tiny world living inside of her that she goes out and buys a shit ton of supplies because she's decided that she wants to hire an entire team of investigators to crawl inside of her and map out this new world. Fellas, how would you feel if a woman asked you to explore her vagina, but then when you got back to her place, she strapped a spelunking helmet on your head? Actually, I would probably be down for that. Steve isn't, super into this idea, but remember, he loves Stacy very, very, very much, so he agrees to go back in. This time, when he is exploring, he comes across a whole rundown town and a bunch of skeletons that are kinda just wandering around. He also runs back into the red and white person that he initially saw on his first trip there and ends up concluding that this must be the ghost girl that used to play with Stacy when she was little. Except this ghost girl has anime eyes and big swirling horns and is described as looking, quote, CGI like Jar Jar Binks. She is actually the girl on the cover, and apparently her name is Fig. So Steve hangs out with Fig for a little while, but obviously after a few hours he tells her that he needs to go home, which Fig does not like. So she has all of the skeleton people capture him and then throw him down a mining shaft. And apparently you do not need food or water in Uterus Universe, so Steve does not die of hunger or thirst while he's down there. Instead, his body starts going through some changes, which includes a substance-like scene where his back splits open and his skeleton comes out of him as a fully independent, autonomous creature. I awake to a cracking sound coming from the back of my head. Then a tearing sound down my spine, as if my flesh is being unzipped from my neck to my pelvis. I'm unable to move as my body opens up. My bones and muscles separate. A skeleton crawls out of me. I leap away, kicking at the creature scurrying across the sweaty ground. My body is lighter. I feel my back. The wound is already healing, but my insides hollow. My bones have become animated and detached themselves from my body. The skeleton squats down in front of me, examining my face, touching its own face with bloody fingers. It looks as confused as I am, wondering what it is doing outside of me. It doesn't have a brain or any vital organs. I'm not sure how it's able to function or think. I'm not sure how I'm able to function or move without any bones. But I am able to move. My body feels almost weightless. My fingers curl around my wrist like rubber snakes. My head is softer without a skull, but it still feels as if maybe there is something in there guarding my brain. A thin layer of cartilage. It feels firm but flexible, like a dolphin's back. Not only that, but his body is changing so that it looks just like Fig's, meaning that his skin is turning red and white like hers, and he's growing horns like hers, and he's getting the anime waifu eyes and all of that shit. And Steve later describes that apparently this is something that Fig's species does. They find the person that they want to mate with, and then they kind of infect them, and it changes their DNA until that person is the same species as the person that infected them. He also has this level of understanding that while he now is very deeply in love with Fig, he understands that the reason why he feels this way is because of whatever new hormones his alien body is giving him is making him feel this desire for Fig. It is part of the whole transformation sequence. So since Steve now looks exactly like Fig, Fig lets him out of his hole, and they go back to town when suddenly an earthquake strikes. Except it's not an earthquake. The town gets flooded with a whole bunch of white stuff because You guessed it, Stacy is fucking. Steve is super pissed about this because, one, he is still inside of her on this dumbass fucking mission that she made him go on, and two, Stacy made him jump through all sorts of hoops and get all sorts of tests done in order to be able to hit it raw, and now she letting this guy tap it without wrapping it? A double betrayal. Except actually it's a triple betrayal because this fuck gets Stacy pregnant, and that pregnancy fully traps Steve and he now no longer has a way to escape. Apparently, this universe is a universe that has lived inside of women of Stacy's generation and has been passed down from mother to daughter for who knows how long. And now that Stacy has become pregnant, Uterus Universe is no longer inside of Stacy, but is now inside of Stacy's baby, meaning that Steve cannot feasibly leave Uterus Universe for the next 20 years. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I guess technically Steve could leave the little baby earlier than that, seeing as Fig used to come out of Stacy when she was a kid, but Steve seems to respect women's bodily autonomy enough to at least wait until the child is full-grown age before attempting to do something like that to her, which I suppose is a win. But he does also come to the conclusion that, like, since he is no longer really human anymore, I mean, his whole entire fucking he doesn't have a skeleton anymore. And now that he's, like, not a people, obviously he can't really go back to the regular world, so, like, no matter what, he's kind of just here, living in Uterus Universe for the rest of until he dies, I guess. And that is how the Haunted Vagina ends, with our main character being trapped inside this Uterus Universe, inside of an unborn baby, with altered DNA, and now he's living this, like, CNC lifestyle. Incredible. Honestly, when we got to the part where it was revealed that Stacy is fucking and then gets pregnant, I really thought that this story was going to end with Uterus Universe dying via abortion. How wild would that be? To die via abortion when you are like a 28-year-old or however old Steve is, full-grown man. Oh my god. I just realized something. This book was written in 2006, and now it is 2026, which means that the baby that Steve is trapped inside is now technically old enough for him to emerge from. Although I don't know if Steve is gonna want to emerge with the way that things are going on in this world right now. I would not blame him if he came out, took one look around, and then pulled a Ralph. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this. I know that I haven't uploaded it in a while, and this video is kind of a bit different from the types of videos that I used to make, but I've been having like such a bad reading slump for the past first 6 months of this year, and I think that rediscovering my love of reading this way is gonna be really fun, and I think it's gonna be an interesting journey for all of us to go on. If you want to see what I'm doing in my regular life, definitely check me out on Instagram, or if fan art is more of your thing, you can see what I am making over on my Tumblr. But besides that, thank you for spending your time with me today. Make sure to stay safe and have a fantastic day. Bye.